Welcome to the DSEF. The Direct Selling Executives Forum was created to be a place where real direct selling executives and vendors in the space can come out and share solutions to challenges that face us all in the marketplace. Our guest today is going to be unpacking a topic and sharing their raw thoughts for you to learn from. All right, let's go meet our guest.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first episode of the Direct Selling Executives Forum in the new studio. Man, this is so much fun. We're going to have such a good time today. James, I want to thank you for coming out here all the way from Georgia. Join us today. Just so exciting to have you here. So before we bring out James and share a bit of his story, today's subject from those of you in the LinkedIn group has been all about creating duplication in your culture. And when we were walking through some of your questions and some of the topics and frameworks, we were thinking of who could we have that would come out and share on this topic. And I was so excited when you said yes, James, because in James's background, he spent over 30 years here in direct sales. Started as a rep in the space, has been a six-figure earner, was in the U.S. military during his time in direct sales and after. You've owned your own marketing agency since 2000. You do programs today where both you build groups and then you're also supporting people who have groups, and you even work with corporate at times. So you're seeing each end of the Rubik's Cube. And it's just a fun way to be here. So thank you so much for taking the time to come out here to Chicagoland to speak live in the studio today. It's a gift to have you here.
Well, when you said to come on out, and I said, well, how close are they to Giordano's, the Illuminati's? I said, they're really close. Mm-hmm. I have to do this. And so, of course, thank you very, very much for the invite.
I always tell people, Chicago want to be Chicago without 800-calorie sliced pizza. It is a treat.
Yes, absolutely.
You just have to be careful with that stuff. It is delicious. All right, so before we jump into the topics and the frameworks, you've been through a ton in your time. For you today, why do you actually do what you do?
Yeah, I think why I do what I do is the same reason why I started doing this.
Okay.
30 years ago, actually 33 years ago, at 15, my mom and dad joined a company, and I got to watch them do everything wrong for 3 years.
Got it.
They were told to go to the weekly meeting, and they didn't. But I did. I took a city bus. I used some paper route money that I had, and I went to those meetings. And they were told to read a book every month, and they didn't. But I did. They were told to listen to audio cassettes. They didn't, and I did. And for 3 years, I saw, I guess, myself changing. They were getting more excited, but income wasn't reflecting. Mm-hmm. So when I turned 18 and I joined, I understood that this was the one thing that was very important. It's not about how much money I'm going to make. It's about how much money I can help other people make.
Yeah.
Because in that time, I'll become a much better person.
Yeah.
And I hope that I am. People that know me back then say that I am. So I hope that I'm going to continue doing the same reason. I love to see others on stage. It's almost like they're my own children. I tell everybody when I enroll somebody, I don't celebrate that day. When they buy a product pack, this is not the time to celebrate.
Sure.
The time to celebrate is when they just made X dollar amounts and they're walking across stage and they get to talk. Yeah. That's my day to celebrate. It's the same thing with a child when they're born. Yeah, we get a little celebration when they're born, but it's so much more when we see them put that cap and gown on at 18 years old and wow, I was part of that. Mm-hmm. This is amazing. So I think that's why I do it.
That's my favorite part of this industry is seeing people who may have not even known if it was possible for them. Mm-hmm. And then they trusted the process and got the result, like removing friction for someone. Yeah, I think in when something that's so special about direct selling, referral marketing, is many of these businesses are not that expensive to get involved for the end user. I think about friends of mine who may have bought a Subway franchise. I always share the story on stage. What do you spend? $100,000, sign a lease for 6 years, get an equity line on your house. It's a big commitment to open a traditional business. And you look in our industry, there's many, many businesses for less than $2,000. Some are less than $1,000. You're rolling and you're building a great business. And it's so amazing to me, the path that creates for families who never could do the other thing. Like they're not going to buy 3 Dunkin' Donuts. They're going to go create a business for their family and a legacy and a heritage because of these systems and platforms that have been put in place for them. And it's it's a very, very special thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
James, you get invited to some very interesting situations, and that's why this show is going to be fun today. We're talking about creating duplication in your culture, which means most of the time the people reach out to you are not getting duplication in their culture. They know they have a problem. People from reps in the field all the way to corporate reach out to you. And so one of my biggest questions from the panel is when you meet with either that top leader or company for the first time, and they've admitted their culture is not duplicating, we're in trouble, SOS. Where do you even start? Like, where do you start when you meet with them?
So I think with whether it's a CEO or the top earner, we have to figure out what makes them up, not what's the culture they tried to create.
Sure.
When that happens, their own personal part goes into there and poisons that culture. So the culture, if it can be created from who they are on an emotional level, not on a demographic level, but on an emotional level, then what happens is it bleeds into the culture even more, and then that culture can go through people. What the downfall is that people that are not the same personality makeup, they're not the same emotional, maybe same political, same faith-based, those people won't stay attracted for too long. You'll get them interested in the product or the comp plan, but they will disappear. The ones that will stay with you for 40 years and continue to buy product every single month and maybe not make a lot of money, that's really the bread and butter of the business. It's the ones that are there every single month because they show up because who they are is who that owner or that top earner is. And that type of culture has not been duplicated by most companies in the industry. It's an owner, whoever that person is, creates this culture that's not really who they are, but they think this is what the audience would be attracted to. And then that's where it fails. Because
that's like going on a date with someone and like trying to be the person you think they want you to be. How does that last long term? All right.
Well, then we'll say that for another day.
I'm just saying that this is so true. There's a book we've recommended many times before on the show, and it teaches something similar to when we talked about Gino Wickman's book Traction out of Michigan. One of the exercises he has company owners go through is this VTO, this idea of creating your vision and setting up your core values, setting up who you are, writing your why. So taking kind of Simon Sinek's start with why, but taking it much further into like, how do you practically do this for an organization? And what you said there is so important, James. You're not creating a why statement and core values because you think that's the people you want to attract. Is like that you those have to be real. Like those have to be how you fire, how you hire, how you reward, how you make decisions. Like your core value should be something that tells people who you're not and who you are. Because we were just before recording talking about Alex Ramosi, right? And they talk about pissing off 80% of your customers. They use that language, that word. They use the word pissing off. They say, hey, if you're not pissing off, it's their word, not mine, right? 80% of the target audience, so that just the 20% knows, wow, they're for me. You're not going to have anyone take action on your offer today. And I see it time and time again, where people are so bland in who they are. That's we're for everybody that nobody's interested. Right, many times in their culture. And you mentioned something when we were speaking earlier today about even how you look for companies to join. You were saying, hey, it's not the comp plan, it's not the product. Walk through that thought. I would love you to share that. I thought that was good.
Sure. So, comp plans, there's a handful of great comp plans out there. They all have great products. Most companies have great products. What it comes down to is when I look at a company, the CEO is not running my position, so I'm really not caring much about the CEO. I apologize to any CEOs that are listening, but what I'm looking for is for me personally, I'm a faith-based person. If I can't feel that, I don't want to hear it. I don't want somebody a rep to tell me, well, our CEO is a Christian. That's great. I better see it. I want to see that. For me personally, I'm very political. I'm politically outspoken. So if you don't align with my politics, I'm not going to want to work with you. If you don't love our military, as I am a U.S. veteran, if you don't love that military, if it's not prevalent in your office, if I don't see an American flag somewhere, I'm not going to join you. If you don't talk about some fundamentals about my personal thing, I'm just not going to work with you. I can work great things in pretty much any comp plan. and I can work great with any product. That's our job as distributors, is to create the story around the comp plan, but we have to have a great start in that company. And I think that's where a lot of people don't interview the company. They interview their sponsor. And that might be something where a lot of people should start looking and saying, let's take a look at the values of the company first before I really get involved.
This is a good thought. It's that when you're thinking about a group that's not duplicating, it's that have they really defined who they're for and who they're not for? And are they living that out? Because if they're not, if they're just for everybody, it's not going to be attractive. It's not going to attract anything at all. So one of the things we talk about all the time on DSEF is frameworks that we can all apply. And so when you're going through this process with somebody, what are some of the frameworks or formulas you have applied that have helped make decisions on what to do to move to a place where the culture is duplicating again?
Yes. So I have actually participated in 2 different companies I can think of specifically. I'm not going to get into names, but there was no culture. It was because it was a startup. The culture hadn't been defined. So I knew that I needed to create that duplicating culture. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I did is all the leaders that I invited first, I brought them to my home. We had a dinner party there. We didn't talk business at all for 2 days. They got to see who I was. Clearly, they got to see who I was. I mean, every part of my home, they can see American flags flying all around, inside and outside. Mm-hmm. So I first got them to see who I am, not business, because who I am not business is who I'm going to be in business. Mm-hmm. And they got to be a part of that. And because of that, the only people that I had over were the ones that were already just like me. Mm-hmm. And guess who they're going to go find? People that are just like them. Mm-hmm. And if that culture of recruiting can stay the same, we'll be very, very careful on who we let in, per se, and who we don't want in. I think what happens when cultures get broken is if a company has created a culture and then they start to stifle the culture a little bit so that they can get more recruits, and they forget their principles, they forget their values, and now you have everybody else that has their own culture coming in. You'll never get it back unless you understand we've got to start something clean here, and we've got to let this new thing bleed big time into the whole organization. And I think it's a challenge for many.
You know, one of the things that you said is really special, and I've seen that play out for even a bunch of people we have both on the show and people I've met with, is you created a meaningful event. I like these meaningful events are a very important thought of when you're making a statement or deciding to get back into this duplication of the system. You need to have a space where there's this meaningful event that moves. We use the words in the industry all the time where the business moves from the head to the heart is something that's been said for a very long time. And I can think about that. I know when I was 16, my sister had joined a direct selling company. She had made 6 figures her first year, which was just ridiculous. None of us thought that was possible. We grew up in rural Illinois in this little farm community. We had no idea that was even possible. And she was a high school English teacher at the local high school. And so it was this wild experience that in her nights and weekends, she was making 3-4 times what she was making during the day back in 2005. And we were amazed by that. And I remember going to those Super Saturday events, is what they call them, a once-a-month training. And you would start to see people accomplishing something that you're like, how is that person being successful? They're maybe the least likely is now winning something or winning an award or accomplishing something. It was a very special moment where you were able to see that, wow, when people actually follow these systems, look what's possible. And one of the things I've seen some of the companies integrate into their culture that I think is worth mentioning is they'll have programs where when you get to rank 2 or you get to rank 3 or you get to rank 4 in the comp plan, you're invited to fly out to corporate and be a part of this event. I've seen stuff where teams, where their companies not doing these types of things, have set the same thing of, hey, when you get to here, there's this meaningful event. And so they're setting people up for moving through the time of a real relationship, because this business is a people business at the end of the day. It's not just about the products or the money inside of a world. It's all about people and how they feel inside of a system. A lot of times I know you're cleaning up all kinds of situations from well-meaning, previous folks when you're working on a project. What are some of the pitfalls you've seen others fall into that you'd say, you know what, that's something you got to watch out for?
I know 2 companies that have addressed that from their onset. Like I said, I don't want to share names of companies.
Sure.
And I think that if every other company out there can follow this one thing, I think they'd all do much better, this industry as a whole. Let the distributors run the field. So I'd love to share the name of the company, but I can't. But the convention is not 90% the doctor that's talking about the science. It's not breakout rooms of how corporate thinks you should build a team. These other companies, corporate is invited to come to the event. It's a distributor-led event. Even it's the top distributors, but it's a distributor-led event. And I think that if corporate could stop seeing those conventions as another revenue source and let the distributors run it, and over that 3-day weekend, 1 hour is for corporate-led stuff. The rest is distributor-led stuff. Let us get back to where we're all telling stories about what we went through, getting the distributors that just sponsored their first person, get them up and introduce who they are and let them walk across stage. And I know we got thousands and thousands of people, so it's kind of difficult. But I think that one great thing that a lot of people are trying to find is they're trying to get connected to a cause and a community. And when the community is being controlled by the company, the corporate staff, what's happening is people are feeling like they're back at a job. And that's why I know these 2 companies, we've spoken about both of them.
Sure.
They don't do that.
Sure.
You know, I hold the Super Saturday every single month, and right before COVID, we hold it in Atlanta, Georgia. We were 6,000 people would come out for a Saturday from 9 a.m. till 5.
Incredible.
We did that 3 straight years. And guess what? Corporate was not allowed, ever. Now that we're back out of COVID, we're getting ready to ramp up again. I've told corporate, because they beg me every single month, can we just come on out there and something? And no. Because we have a culture that's on fire, and it's not the culture of the company. So in fact, my entire downline, and I don't need to say company, but it's well over 40,000 active auto ships right now. They don't go to the company convention at all. They won't, because it's a different culture there. The culture has almost been whitewashed. It's now, well, you're going to learn the science. Well, the science doesn't help my family. It doesn't help emotionally why I'm here or why they're here. We need to hear a real story of why this single mom that has 3 kids, she's a school teacher, and what she did mentally to overcome some things. And we want to sit around little round tables and hear that stuff. We want her to be on stage. Even though she's not making $100,000 a month, she's making $2,500 a month. We want to hear her story. We don't want her to be on a time limit. We don't want her to be well-rehearsed, that she's the best public speaker. We want the real, authentic part. And when I think that when you put corporate all over that event, it feels like the distributors now think in their mind, well, we have to behave a certain way. We can't be the real who we are. And I'd rather have the real distributor show up, not the one that's put on show for the company.
We're talking about church now.
Pretty much.
So what's so really interesting as you're unpacking that, James, is the thought of what we're providing. Because everyone who's here, who's watching this, very few are in the field, right? The people who watch DSEF and the people who are part of our community on LinkedIn are COOs, CMOs, CFOs, CEOs, board members of large direct selling companies. And that thought that, hey, we're not providing a job, but we're providing this platform for freedom is such an important thought. You know, we've run into stifles to duplication in the past when we see the expectation for a leader in XYZ organization. So is it that when you get to this rank, corporate then ropes you into doing all these extra conference calls and webinars each week, and now you have no time to actually go on that Disney cruise with your kids, because if you're not the one on the webinar each week, guess what? No one else is recruiting. And so it's when you look at that value ladder, where I have other clients who I've seen create what I call the cultures of freedom. And I love this thought. So as an example, I've had a number of clients hit the craziest numbers I've seen as being an internal provider to a number of direct selling companies, where they've built as one team. They've been able to get the whole company to build as one team, and they know, hey, we got one webinar every single day, 9 p.m. Eastern happening, and everybody's going to invite. But here's what they did. They took different groups of leaders and they said, hey, James, you got the 1st to the 4th, and you're good. And then Tammy's got the 5th to the 9th, and Doug's got the 10th to the 14th. So James knows, as it's one team building the whole company, that, okay, me and my testimonials and my people, we're going to show up and we're going to rock these 5 days, 5 nights in a row. And then if James wants to travel to this market and do a training there, or he wants to go on a cruise with his kids here, or if he wants to go to a basketball game here, he has the rest of the month as freedom to do whatever. And he knows that the system is still happening. The business building operations, even without him, of a system-dependent business where community can happen. If James wants to host a barbecue in another town and smoke a pork shoulder, invite everybody out to share their stories, he can, because he doesn't have to be on that call that night, because he knew he was on for those 5 days in a row as a super top leader. So when you zoom out and you get to you got to think about, what does this business ideally feel like for each person at each level? This is one of the thoughts that can be really eye-opening to us, because sometimes we can get convicted in thinking like, oh, wait, no, I actually was expecting if they made that much money that they would be doing these things for us on the corporate side. And it's like, no, maybe not. And so I love where you were going with that pitfall. Is the first part that I think everyone should hear is, how are we seeing this opportunity? Are we seeing this as a job to these people and they are our employees? Or are we a platform for them to express their creativity in a compliant way, to do work? Of course, we want compliance. We want to save the opportunity and protect the offer for everybody. But are we seeing these people as micro entrepreneurs on our platform that we're here servicing and letting them be the star? That's a very powerful thought that I think a lot of us, you kind of need to pause the recording, or if you're in your car, you kind of gotta sit there and ask if you're being honest about that. That's a heart jerker one right there.
I think when you mentioned pitfalls, I think another big pitfall is when corporate hires outside gurus to come teach the field. You don't need a guy that was good 20 years ago to come teach your company in your culture. You should be pulling from within, growing the reps from within, letting them become the trainers of your field. Too many times we want to hire this guy or this social media guru because they got something so unique and so cool, and then this person. And what you're doing is you're instilling wild squirrel syndrome in your reps, because now I should pay attention to, my favorite is the ATM social media method. That doesn't work at all, but we should go listen to that company over there doing it.
I've had to fix that a few times. Yeah.
Yes.
I know that one's tough.
Or we got to go listen to the 7 skills over from this guy. Well, why can't we teach it internally? Mm-hmm. It's sort of like being a United States veteran. And I remember 2 administrations ago, the director of the VA up in New York never served 1 day in the military.
Oh, wow.
Wasn't married to a military member, didn't have children, no parents. And that person, I have a lot of friends that work for the VA, that person had a staff meeting with all the VA employees and was making directives based on their personal opinion as if they knew what a combat veteran actually went through.
That's tough.
No, it's not going to work. If you're going to give a directive, maybe you should have filled these shoes once before. And, bring in people that know the space. That person could have easily brought in another veteran to sort of be the voice to speak, so that it's, okay, this person understands.
Yeah.
The same thing happens in network marketing. You're going to bring in somebody that did it 15 years ago to talk to our team today?
Yeah.
No, it's not worth it.
One really healthy part that I know a lot of corporate teams struggle with is that relationship between the field and corporate. And this is a pitfall you've been speaking around, but you've had experience in the past of being on very high-level boards, of distributor boards inside of a culture of a company, where there's an actual board that meets and votes and approves and has power. Some of those companies have their own distributor constitution that are a part of them. And so what are your feelings on kind of this separation of powers culture, similar to the U.S. government, that certain direct selling companies are deploying? And is it something that you would suggest other executives explore?
Most CEOs that I've talked to over the years, and I've talked to probably 40 different CEOs that I would say that I've developed a good relationship with, They all say the same thing. They want to do as good as one of our biggest legacy companies out there. You know, that company that does about $8 billion a year.
That one.
Yeah. There's nothing fancy about the products or their comp plan. There's nothing fancy about corporate office. I mean, it's a beautiful corporate office. What's so exciting about that company is their IBOA, their Independent Board of Associates. So when the company wants to come in and, well, we have this new cool trick to the compensation plan. Well, you don't just get to push it out. You got to bring it to the Independent Board of Associates. And that Independent Board of Associates is truly independent. And they can say no. Now, of course, they got to give a good reason, but they can say no to that. What that does to the distributors is it gives them a voice. That they're no longer at a job where the boss is going to say, you're not getting a quarter raise or a dollar raise. It's now a level playing field. I have said this for the last 20 years. Corporate does a great job coming up with great products. They really do. They do a great job at finding the best medical advisors. They really do. At the beginning, they come up with a great compensation plan. Stay in corporate. Let the field run the field. Now, yes, we have to worry about compliance. I do understand that. Put some checks and balances in there. But let the field handle the field, and corporate will do so much better in the long run. I think every company should have an IBOA, every single one of them, and it truly operate independently of corporate, and corporate doesn't get to make final decisions without that. It's a very uncommon thing to say for a lot of CEOs. They're not comfortable with that because it's giving up too much control. But that control or that lack of control is also part of that culture. When the distributors realize they have some type of pull, some type of control on the outcome of the company that they've chose to invest their life in, well, they're going to want to give more to that company.
Yeah, they feel the ownership.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
the
absolutely.
weight of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's an important thought because on that search for significance for so many of these people, I mean, if you think about it, many of the people who come into this industry that do well, right? This is the most they've ever earned in their life before.
Oh,
so for the
absolutely.
ones that do well. And we've talked in the past on the show about financial literacy training and stuff because we've seen some weird stuff, right? When certain people start earning and are broke at another level, right? We've seen some weird stuff as leaders go. But what you're speaking to here that is a critical part of knowing duplication, creating the stuff, it's not about just who's barking the loudest, right? But it's saying, have you set up some of your structure to where the people who do lead your field feel that ownership and that decision making? And what you've said is literally what I hear about the most when leaders are leaving. When people are leading, is I've told them for 6 years to fix these 3 things, and they're not listening. So it's not for me. And it's not that you'll keep all of those people, but if you have a culture of where people are voted onto a board and voted off of a board and are tenured on a board and take turns serving on that board, it is a powerful thought. And it brings me back to defining who these people are. Many times I tell people that who are new to opening this channel, that running your field is much more like a volunteer army at church than it is employees. I'm like, if you think these people are employees getting a job, you're going to be sorely mistaken. It's just like with your children. If you expect your kids to be something they're not, and then they don't do that thing they're not, are you going to be, whose fault is that? Is it their fault or your fault as the parent? It's the exact same thing in direct sales, referral marketing. And as this world gets it's getting a little muddier because now in referral marketing channels, we have customer rewards programs. We have MLM programs. We have ambassador programs, social selling. We got influencer marketing. We got a lot of different styles of channels of referral marketing going on. And expecting people to be who they are and not something they aren't, and getting clear on that is going to help you as a corporate team win more in the long term as you're working with people and getting into duplication. And you're also going to hear about those opportunities. When we talk about duplication, it's all about removing friction so many times. And how are you getting feedback on what's working and not working? So I love what you said about the board. As we wrap up today, some of the people who are listening, James, they're overwhelmed. Okay, their corporate team already has objectives on the roadmap for the next 24 months, and it's been decided, and that's it. And they're in execution mode, and they barely sleep enough at night. And they're listening to this today because they need a little brain break and need to hear what's going on in the space. And they're just looking for that one thing. They don't got capacity to do a gazillion things. They're looking for that one thing they could add or remove from their plate this year that's going to make all the difference in creating more duplication in their culture. So for that totally stressed out person that has no idea that they're already on a 24-month, just imagine their 24 months are plotted out ahead of them, and they're listening today in their car or they're on the plane because they downloaded this, and they're saying, what is the one thing I need to apply from what James is saying today?
So to that corporate person is give the distributors a sense of ownership. Ask them what they feel they need, not tell them what you want to give them. Because many times you're going to find what they need is exactly what was already on your roadmap, but let them make them think it was their idea. You know, a great book by Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is you can win a friend by coming up with an idea, but making them feel it was their idea. And if I feel that I'm being heard in a company, if I feel that that company is listening to my recommendation, I'm going to go that much further to make sure that that company continually goes on another 5, 10, 20 years. So I think that would be the biggest thing, is that to listen to those distributors, make them understand that their voice is extremely important. And then if you've never been in the field yourself before as a corporate person, that's a very hard thing to understand what us distributors go through. Because rejection every day for us is very different than when your boss just tells you what to do.
You know, creating that space for and defining it for how you'll listen is such a key. And when it's undefined, corporate's just getting the tail wagging the dog of who the loudest, most, expressive distributor personality is. And so defining that space so that you're working with the voices who are actually doing the work is such a key. That's awesome, James.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a total treat to have you here today. For those of you that are brand new to the DSEF, we invite you to go to directSellingExecutiveForum.com and you'll be forwarded to the LinkedIn group. It's absolutely free to join. You just apply, but you have to be a real executive in direct selling. So it's meant to be just our community of those of us that are stewarding these roles and running direct selling companies. And if you have other panel guests or other panel questions you'd like answered, do post them in the group on LinkedIn. It was a total treat to have you here today, James. Safe travels.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you soon.
Yes, take care.
If you haven't yet joined the DSEF group on LinkedIn, go to directSellingExecutiveForum.com or go on LinkedIn and search for Direct Selling Executive Forum to apply. The group is free and is an invite-only community of direct selling executives by direct selling executives.